Good afternoon and welcome to the Saturday edition of the People Show with your host, Mark Wallace, and facilitator here, coming to you on every Saturday from 1 o'clock until 2 p.m. And of course, my guest who joins me every week is the Cook County Circuit Court Judge Leonard Murray, who is the supervising judge over real estate, basically, and all of those housing and safety areas. And he will be joining us momentarily. I know that he is running a little bit behind, as he called, getting to his location. All right, so we're going to be talking with him in just a few minutes, but so I certainly want to welcome all of you to this week's program, and thank you for joining. I'd like to also ask you to like and share the podcast with your social media outlets and networks and invite them to come on. Also, we are on every Monday night on intellectualradio.com from 7 o'clock until 9 o'clock, talking to you about all of the social, political, and socioeconomic conditions and issues that are pertinent to our community and what we can do about them. Far more than any of the other gossip that people like to talk about. And I'm going to talk about that in the latest gossip that has been in the news. And of course, Donald Trump became the first former president to be convicted of a felony of crimes on this past Thursday, as a New York jury found him guilty on all 34 counts in a scheme that was cooked up so that he could illegally influence the 2016 election. I know that all of the opposition, all of his sycophants, want to make this and minimize this to some sort of money that he paid to a porn star. But the money that he paid to the porn star was not the issue. The issue was that he paid money to a porn star and then tried to cover it up by falsifying documents that was filed illegally to influence an election. And that is a crime. And there have been more than 600 other people in that same jurisdiction that was convicted of the exact same crimes. And those people also served prison sentences. So it's not novel. What is novel is that he is the first president in more than 249 years to be held accountable, to be found guilty, to be indicted, charged for a crime, and convicted and held accountable for his actions. Now, you can either want to be willfully ignorant to ignore that we have laws by which we are governed and have to live by, though they may not be perfect, but it is the system that we all live by. And of course, we know that there have been injustices and continue to be injustice within the justice or so-called criminal justice divisions in our country and different places that Black people in particular, have been disparaged by and disadvantaged by and unfairly treated. I mean, we understand that history. And so for Donald Trump to try and conflate his crimes, that he is now officially a convicted criminal who is presumably going to be the presumptive nominee for the Republican nomination to become the candidate for President of the United States again for 2024, for the 2024 election. You almost can't say that without, choking up that we're going to actually have a criminal who is going to be one of the two candidates running for the highest office in the land, the most powerful office in the world, that this person who now has been convicted of and still indicted on 3 other cases, 1 other state case and 2 other federal cases, all surrounding the election. Well, one is a classified documents case that he withheld classified documents, lied about not having them, and then didn't want to cooperate with the Justice Department to return documents that belong to the people, not to him, that they tried for more than 18 months to negotiate with him to get those documents back, and he refused. He lied, which means he refused. That case is going in Florida. He tried to influence and tried to overturn the 2020 election by interfering with the election or trying to get the Secretary of State down in Georgia to locate some phantom votes that did not exist, and offered some veiled threats. He's under indictment and charged in Georgia. He's also charged in DC for trying to overturn a free and fair election. This is a criminal that is being held to account for his actions. And so, regardless of whatever side of the spectrum that you're on, if you are a person of this country, if you are a citizen of this country, and you truly and sincerely care about the democratic process and making the democratic process better and work more justly and fairly, you can't just make the blanket statement and the ignorant blanket statement that, oh, it's all rigged, it's all corrupt. There are some people who are corrupt and should be held accountable. And it doesn't make any difference what their political affiliation, what letter is in front of their political affiliation, whether it's a Republican or whether it's a Democrat. If they are found to be violating the law, and these are people who hold public office that have been entrusted by the people, by their constituents, with that privilege of power to represent the well-being and the welfare of those constituents. If those people go to those public spaces, those public servants, they're not celebrities, and we need to stop celebritizing public servants. That's what they are. When they go into those public offices and those public arenas to use them for their own transactional benefits, and they get caught, they should be held to account like everybody else who commits a crime in this country. You have your day in court. You can present your defenses, and you have district attorneys, you have prosecutors that has to investigate, put forth evidence before grand juries, and grand juries are made up of anywhere between 12 and 24 people, and in some cases there are 2 or 3 grand jurors, and they have to present evidence by which these people hear and have to make a determination on whether or not someone may have committed a crime. And in thus doing so, then the prosecution will then present those facts before a jury and a court, putting on witnesses and testimony to corroborate the allegations that they're bringing against an individual or individuals. And both sides have the opportunity to argue, to put forth witnesses, to corroborate, and to refute. And at the end of those deliberations, at the end of those arguments, it goes to a jury of 12 people who go back after they've received jury instructions on how they have to view the evidence and how they have to come to a decision based upon the law, and they make a decision. That's how it works. That's what our process is. Is it perfect? No, but it's what we have, and it's the best that we have, and it's the best in the world. So Donald Trump had his opportunity with all of his millions of dollars that he had to buy the best of representation. So he trying to liken himself or to compare himself to poor Black people who, in many cases, have been wrongfully charged and convicted of crimes that they did not commit, serving time, sometimes in 20, 30 years, and even cases have been put to death because they did not have the privilege of having the kinds of representation that Donald Trump had. He is a criminal who violated the trust of the public, who violated the law, and he has now been held accountable for those crimes of 34 felony counts in New York. And it is my hope that he has to be held to the same account that all of those 600 other people charged of the exact same thing were held to account and had to pay a price to do that by serving time. If he has to serve time, he has to serve time. That's not a difficult thing to do. He's got Secret Service. His Secret Service, the personnel, they don't work 24 hours. They have shifts. And they'll be able to shift them out wherever they take him to do his time. Hopefully they take him and have him to do his time in a prison, just like everybody else who committed those crimes. Just like Michael Cohen, his own fixer, his own attorney that was federally charged and convicted of the exact same crime for the exact same thing that he went to prison for, connected to the exact same thing. So how in the world could Donald Trump be innocent of the exact same thing that his attorney was convicted of federally, doing on behalf of Donald Trump? So unless you are willing to ignore the testimony, ignore the evidence, then you're not serious about the process. You're just not serious about the process. And you're only interested in, chaos, just like he is. But I would hope that that would not be the case. There are some people who are just going to be like that. I've watched people who somehow think that Donald Trump cares about Black people or cares about Hispanic people or cares about poor people. You are either willfully ignorant and not interested in listening to or reading or researching or understanding this man's history and his current actions that clearly demonstrate of who he really is and what he cares about, because I don't know that there's a single human being outside of himself that he really cares about, but that's neither here nor there. That's neither here nor there. This is who he is. If you are a person, a decent human being within this democratic process that we have, as imperfect as it may be, are seriously interested about things being done properly and getting better, and we having a system of real justice and equity, then you have to be willing to accept the truth, and you certainly have to be willing to accept the process by which we have. And if you don't like the process, the way that it is working by which we have, there is also a process called get involved. Get involved, and let's make the process work better. That's the only way to do it. Or if you just want to sit on the sidelines, or you just want to make noise and you want to make, uninformed accusations without the benefit of any information to support whatever position that is. One of the most boring things for me is to have a conversation with someone who is not willing to accept facts, or certainly not willing to investigate to find out what the truth actually is. They're called gossipers, not gospels, gossipers. Those are basically people who sit around and talk about things for which they know nothing about and spew out things that they either heard or just made up, which is pretty typical of Donald Trump. I get pretty bored of those people. I have really no interest in that. But I am interested in people who really want things, who really want to work to make things better, who really want to dig in and understand the truth of whatever it is. And it is clear by the evidence that was put forth, by the testimonies that were put forth, that Donald Trump committed a crime, and he was held to account for those crimes that he committed. It's only unfortunate that he hasn't been held to account to crimes that he's committed before that he's gotten away with. So he will face trials on other crimes that he's been charged or indicted for committing. And he will go through a process, and he will be tried. Evidence will be put forth. Testimonies will be given to corroborate or refute the allegations. That's what our juris system is. That's what our nation of laws work, that everybody should get their day in court. It was not a kangaroo court. Now, if you want to know about a kangaroo court, there are kangaroo courts. That was not one of the kangaroo courts. In fact, we have a kangaroo court style, if they want to call it that, right here in Chicago, called administrative hearings. I will agree with anyone, and I will label that as a kangaroo court, where you have people who go before not a real judge. Administrative hearing officers are not judges. If you get a ticket for a red light camera ticket, or a speeding camera ticket, or a parking ticket, or a weeds ticket, or some sort of building violation, and you go before an administrative hearing body, which is a hired attorney by the city of Chicago, paid $200 and some odd an hour, and they claim that they don't work for the city, but they're paid by the city. They're hired by the city and paid by the city and work on the city's property. I don't know how they can say that they don't work for the city. That is what I would consider to be a kangaroo style court. Not the court that Donald Trump had to go before and had representation, because even in the administrative hearing, you almost are defenseless there. You can't even defend yourself against some of the things that they bring forth. And you're sitting before somebody who was hired by the same body who was supposed to be neutral or impartial. That is what I would consider to be a kangaroo court. All right, so whatever the case may be, I hope that you will take a much more serious look at things and be willing to do the work to get the information, to look at the facts, and then to be able to make decisions based on the facts. And you're going to have to make a decision on the facts of who is going to be the person that you're going to cast your ballot for to be the president of the United States on November the 5th for 2025 going forward. But you need to look at the facts and you need to look at the records. And as a person who was not a supporter, but who is a thorough, full-fledged now supporter of the Biden-Harris administration, not because it's a binary choice, what it is a binary choice, but as a distinctive choice of someone who, in my view, based on the facts, which we will get into, we won't get into it today, but I'm certainly going to get into it because I want you to have the facts of what was done between these two administrations, and in particular by the Biden administration, what he has put forth and been able to get through Congress, through the craziness of Congress, and still be able to accomplish the things that he's been able to accomplish is nothing short of remarkable. And in those policies, which equate to funding, which equate to distribution of monies into communities, an opportunity to address real problems, long-stemming problems, that was never done by Republicans, in particular for Black communities or poor people. That you would have Black people who are being misled by some other misled Black person to assert that Donald Trump is an option for Black people, notwithstanding his criminal behavior or his criminal conviction. He's a criminal. I can call him a criminal now because he is a convicted criminal. That there is not an obfuscation of evidence from Donald Trump or the Republicans. And I've challenged people, Black people that is, who want to think that Republicans are people that we should be supporting. Then I challenge you or anybody to bring me one, not two, one piece of legislation that Republicans have put forth from Republicans, not that they voted on, one piece of legislation that Republicans have put forth for the benefit of Black people or poor people in this country in the last 40 years, just one real piece of legislation that they have come up with, that they put forth, that they argued, that they debated and passed on behalf of Black people in these United States of America. I challenge any of them. Any of the ones who want to walk around and be angry with the purity attitude, just bring one piece of legislation. Now, I have put that challenge out now for 4 years, even with my former co-host who completely abandoned the ship, Charles Thomas, who has become tethered to the Republican. He identifies as an independent, and you can identify as an independent, but for all intents and purposes, supporting Republican candidates who said that even if, it was Joe Biden and Donald Trump, that he would vote for Donald Trump. So he would vote for a criminal. But my point is that you bring forth the document, the policy that Republicans have passed on behalf of working families, poor people, or Black people, or Hispanic people in this country. I defy you to bring just one. And to date, no one has been able to bring it. Now, some people like to throw out suggestions, but they can't corroborate them. So you can't just tell me, you have to demonstrate it. You have to show it to me where that I can come back and say, oh, Republicans did something. I'm asking for one, and it's been 4 years and I have not gotten a one. And the first thing that people like to hear about, oh, I like, that he closed the border. Well, he didn't close the border. He shut down our asylum system. That's all he did, was shut down our asylum system. And Democrats and Republicans both have not come up with or dealt with the immigration problem that it persists, which creates a problem that we have with people, or the so-called border problem that people like to talk about and be distracted by. Because as Black people, the border problem has not been a problem for Black people in this country. The people coming across the border have not been the problem for Black people. The people who have been a problem for Black people in this country are in this country, from this country, and working in governments in this country. Those are the people who have been problems for Black people, not poor people who are trying to find a better way of life. They are not your hindrance. And they've got you focusing on some people who have no decision making over things that impact your life, while they legislate your jobs somewhere else and out of reach for you, and they got you watching some other poor person. Those have been the problems for Black people in this country. So I hope that we get focused together and let's deal with organizing ourselves together to impact the real issues and deal with the real people who are a hindrance to the progression of our communities. That's what you and I really need to be focused on. Now, let me just I alluded to it earlier about celebritizing people who are in public office. I try to refrain from using the term politician because it basically gives, in my opinion, it gives them a out. What they are is they are public servants. They are elected to a public office by the public to be representatives of the public and stewards over the public's resources. So they are public servants. That's what they are. They are not celebrities. They are servants, not celebrities. And we need to stop treating them as such. Robert De Niro, Morgan Freeman, Denzel Washington, Sidney Poitier, Gladys Knight, Oprah, Michael Jordan, those are celebrities. So if you want to celebritize somebody, those are the people you get their autographs and you get all excited about the entertainment that they provide. Those are celebrities. People who are representatives are elected to a public office. And that's what we need to identify them as and remember what they are and who they are and what their responsibilities are. And some of us have just, whenever we see someone who is an elected official, I have no issues with respecting people and respecting people who hold an office. I have no issue with that. But to giving them some sort of holy, celebritized, deified position is simply wrong. They have a duty. They have a duty to serve the public, not to self-serve. It's not a gas station that they drive into and serve themselves. They don't go into that public office to serve themselves. We sent them there so that they can serve the interest of the public. If you want to serve yourself, stay in private practice, whatever that may be. Get out of the people's office. If you're going there to do bidding for yourself, you should not even be considering yourself when you're going into these public spaces. You're going into those public spaces and you got there because the public voted for you to get there into the public's office. So they are not celebrities. I don't have a single photograph of a single public official in my house, not one. And there are public officials that, only a few, that I consider to having, a decent relationship with, or working, able to work with or confide with. But I don't have a single public official's picture in my house on purpose, because they are public servants. They're not celebrities. The people that I have pictures of, not that I have a lot of them, but the people that I have pictures of in my house are people who I consider to be people who have really impacted my life in one way or the other. Those are my celebrities, not a public official. Now, I'm not demeaning the public official. I'm just simply saying we need to get this thing in check to where, you know, whenever a person in a public office comes around, we take out a bunch of cameras like we're the paparazzi. And these could be some of the same people who are legislating your jobs out of town, who are fining and feeing and taxing you to death and supporting the interest of other people. And we send them back to those public office, but you got pictures of them cheesing and smiling with the same people who are legislating against you. We really need to get that in check. We need to get that in check. All right, listen, we're going to have deal with more of that. I'm not sure what that is. Sorry about that. We're going to deal with more of that on Monday night. We'll get more into this. We're going to get more into the differences between Biden and Trump. The facts, nothing but the facts, not gossip, not opinion, not hearsay, but the facts going into this election. I am going to be dealing with policy passed by both of these and how they impact the Black community. All right, this is our legal hour, and it looks like Judge Murray has made it to his location, and so I'm going to bring him on to the studio. And of course, today we're going to be talking about matters, and one of the things that we didn't get to last week that we were supposed to talk about, we're going to talk about it this week, is we're going to talk about those of you who are dog owners or want to be dog owners or people who have pets. We're going to be talking about that as it relates to the law. And of course, we will take your legal questions. If you have any legal question for Judge Murray, you can type it into the chat. I will read the question off to Judge Murray, and he will address your legal question. Now, remember, the judge cannot give you legal advice to a particular case that you may have, but he can address a question or a legal question. So type it into the chat, and then I'll read it off, and Judge Murray will address your case. Welcome to the program, Judge Murray. How are you? We can't hear you.
I'm on now.
There we go. We got you.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry for not being able to get on at one. Just had another commitment that I had to solve. So now I'm got my undivided attention.
All right. Wonderful. Wonderful. All right. Well, the few minutes that we have left, so we can get right into it. So last week we were going to talk about the law as it relates to dog owners. I'm a dog owner. I have a big German Shepherd who is very intimidating every time he walks out on the street. He's about 110 pounds, and he's a long breed German Shepherd. But
That's a big dog.
yeah, very, but very friendly. Just his stature is very intimidating.
Yeah.
So help us to understand. You wanted to talk about this. You and I had a conversation about at least talking about this topic. So what should people know as it relates to being a dog owner?
Okay. Well, first thing is that there is a registration requirement under the city ordinance. So when your animal reaches 4 months of age, you are supposed to register your pet with the city. Um, and there are a couple reasons for that. One is in the event the dog becomes lost, so the city has that information to try to retrieve it and put it back in your hands. Secondly, if there's an incident that involves your pet, then of course they also can trace that back to you. So that's important. The other thing is that uh, many of us will walk our dog around the neighborhood and other areas, may have him out and about trying to get exercise. But it's important to remember in the city of Chicago, your dog must always be on the leash. I know that can be limiting in terms of the animal's ability um, to be its natural self, but that is the city ordinance, and it's in place for purposes of safety. Uh, in addition to the requirement of the pet being on a leash, you also must restrain your animal. That's also a requirement, and um, it's an issue that comes up from time to time when, unfortunately, uh, pets get into an encounter, or the pet somehow engages with a human. Uh, that there may be a question of whether or not the pet was sufficiently restrained, um, despite the presence of a leash around its neck or body. So those are two very important uh, aspects to know. And then finally, talk about it for now and then try to develop the conversation. And that is, if your dog somehow gets engaged in um, um, a fight with another dog, or in fact bites a human, um, if that is reported to the Director of Animal Care and Control, um, there is a designation that can be placed on your pet, which then will require certain limitations on its activities. And it's referred to as dangerous dog. So if once the city does an investigation, they've got a staff that will go out and investigate.
I think we've lost your audio. Judge Murray, I think we lost your audio. I think we lost your audio. Okay, there you go. You're back. Okay, we got you now.
Yeah. Okay. Mark, can you give me a minute?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. All right. All right. Okay. So we're going to wait till Judge Murray comes back. But yeah. So, Mr. Gibson, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your first name right. I think it's D. Nerard. I believe it is D. Nerard. If I pronounce it wrong, I'm so sorry. We're going to get to your question because I think it's an important question. What recourse do we have for people who do not pick up after their pets poop? We're going to talk about that because I think that there are some ideas that we have. I found that and I can't remember what city it was. And I don't want to state it without knowing it. I think Judge Murray is back, so let's bring Judge Murray back
Yeah.
on into the studio. Okay, Judge, you're back.
Yeah. Okay. So if that occurs, and they deem uh, that in their judgment the dog is dangerous, they can issue a citation against you. Um, there is an adjudicatory process that is handled at the administrative hearing level. Um, you have a right to defend yourself or be represented by counsel, whatever you choose. The city typically is represented by a member of the Corporation Counsel's office in such cases. Uh, and there can be a finding that that if an injury is caused, then you can be responsible for those costs, at least as deemed by that administrative hearing panel. So these are
Hmm.
things to be familiar with and knowledgeable about, um, so that we all love our pets. So we just have to be very mindful of the exposure and risk that could be inherent um, in pet ownership.
There was a question that one of our viewers is having that I have been really um, quite concerned about. In particular, well, it's one of those issues. So, D. Nerard Gibson asked the question. He says, "What recourse do we have for people who do not pick up after their pets poop on our lawns?"
That is a good question. If you are familiar, or at least can designate sufficiently the pet owner, because that is a good point. There is a city ordinance that also requires that you pick up after your pet. But if you can, and there's a fine associated with failing to do that. I want to say it's in the area of $300, but don't hold me to that. But
Yeah,
in
it's up
any
to $500. It
up
can
to
be
five.
anywhere, yeah, up to $500.
Right. So that can be imposed if you do not pick up after your pet, and they can attribute that situation to your animal.
One of the things that I was just talking about in between the break there, and I can't remember what municipality it's in, where it is in the country, but there is a place where you have to register your dog, but also in registering your dog, you have to register their DNA.
Mm.
And they actually have a squad that goes around, and if people do not pick up after themselves and they test the DNA and it comes back to your dog, they send you a $1,500 ticket. And I can't remember where this is. I mean, not it's not a $1,500 ticket, a $500 ticket.
Yeah.
They send you a $500 ticket, which I think it's a very clever idea. I do believe that there are things that people should be held to account to, and they should be fined if they don't um, comply with the law. I was just having that conversation prior to you coming on that we are a country of laws and we all have to comply with the law. So I'm not sure if we have something like that here or if we can even do something like here, but I would be in favor of it.
We don't have such a requirement either in the city or for under state law. Um, but I'm just thinking out loud about this. I don't know that um, that would violate any constitutional norms. Dogs don't have constitutional rights. So I suppose the question would be whether or not the dog owner has such rights that could um, allow them to resist or reject that attempt. But thinking out loud right now, I don't think so. I don't think it's the same standard.
Oh, so, but when you're saying that, are you speaking that in relative on whether or not we can be able to impose a penalty or impose a law that they have to comply with?
I think we certainly can impose a penalty, but the question is whether or not you can be required to provide your dog's DNA,
Hmm.
um, which I think is that's another step in terms of enforcement. And I guess the question would be what would be the purpose for requiring um, the securing of the DNA from your pet.
Well, the purpose would be so that you can differentiate if somebody is leaving um poop out in the on the public space and they're not cleaning it up and they have someone that tests that poop and it goes back to your dog's DNA, they can track it back to the person who owned that particular animal.
Well, the point I'm raising is in the legislation that would be enacted, does it specify the limitations on um, the purpose for using or securing that DNA? If
Yeah,
it's limited,
I think we could have the language to be very nuanced for that purpose.
no, I don't disagree. I'm just saying that it's possible that that legislation could allow that DNA to be used for purposes beyond mere excrement testing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and it could be very helpful. Maybe your pet has a disease that you're unaware of,
Yes.
that they might be able to, make you aware of,
Well,
if in fact they're doing that DNA testing.
yeah, and uh, I think it's the case that a person who is charged with certain offenses, their DNA can be collected. So the question now is whether or not that policy and thought process should also cover pets, or at least dogs.
Yeah,
Um, so I mean, it's a policy question that certainly will be debated. I'm sure resisted in some quarters.
of course. I think, uh, uh, back to one of the questions that you asked relative to that is that how a dog is deemed. I think a pet is deemed as property. I think the law recognizes them as your property.
Yes, yes. In fact, in domestic relation situations and other contexts where folks are splitting up property or assets, sometimes there's a fierce fight over who gets the dog. And you're right, it is deemed property.
Right.
And that's
Look.
one reason I think it may well be very difficult to resist um, the enactment of law that would permit the government to collect the DNA of your animal.
Mhm. Um, I also want to ask you this, relative, because we're going to jump to place, relative to evictions. We just had a recent situation where, we have been in court for a long time, well over a year, and finally got, a a judgment after two 4-month extensions, and they were not able to comply. And the judge entered a final, um, judgment in stanter, and, ordered a order of possession. Well, because it is and it's a church, and, um, so the sheriff contacted us and, of course, told us what to do, and we were there waiting for them. They came, and went through the process, and, so they had us to go back to our vehicle, and they said that, once we execute the eviction, then we will come back and turn over possession to you. Well, they never did that. They went to their car, and then they came back over to us and gave us some story that said, that they cannot execute the eviction because, they have to notify, someone of the church that they're actually going to be doing the eviction, which was odd to us because you've already been notified. You receive a letter from the sheriffs saying that they're going to be executing an eviction at some period of time post you getting that letter. Any thoughts about that?
Uh,
Or does the sheriff have that kind of authority to not enforce the law that has been, ruled on by a court?
well, they are charged with enforcing uh, orders, if you will, within their realm of authority. And evictions are such a um, power that they have. Uh, and however, there are certain situations where um, they are charged with with executing that order in a humane fashion. And for example, if they were to encounter um, a person who's infirm in a space for which possession order has been granted, then typically they will call out social services to aid that person in finding a place, soft landing, if you will. So that's an example. Now, with respect to the church, um, I guess you would be entitled to understand why they thought it was necessary to not enforce the order in that instance, and in fact, uh, give um, the church additional uh, opportunity to be on alert that the enforceable order is going to be executed. Um, but if once they're given notice, then I think it's within the serious um, realm of authority to enforce it. So I think you really have to inquire from that hierarchy as to why um, they decided not to enforce that order on the occasion when they were given previous notice.
Yeah. Okay. I want to jump back to the dog situation. When you talked about having your dog on restraints.
Yes.
So let's say a person is walking down the street. You have your dog on a restraint. You have your dog on a leash. You're walking your dog, and someone else is walking in the opposite direction of you, and you have control of your dog. But that person um, walks over, say, in your space or something, and uh, the dog bites that person. What's the liability there?
Well, in addition, the, merely having a leash on the dog is not necessarily restraining the dog. So the question in that instance would be, um, was the dog sufficiently restrained? And secondly, part of the analysis there would be whether or not there was provocation.
Mhm.
So did something occur that caused the dog to react the way it did? What was the dog provoked? And that's going to be a factual question based on what occurred.
Right.
And let's go back for a moment to that question about what do you do when you see someone allowing your dog to, relieve themselves on your lawn. Call 311 um, and report it. And then if you've got sufficient facts to identify um, who it is in a situation, most of us have cell phones that will allow you to take a photo and even a video. It's probably something that will be helpful in terms of making the case for the issuance of a citation.
Like a Ring doorbell or something like that.
Yes, or your phone, your cell phone.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. All right, Mr. Gibson. That's the answer to your question. Is that you do have recourse, and if you have some way of providing that information, you may be able to get some justice there. Hopefully, that answered your question. All right. Well, listen, that's going to do it for us today, Judge Murray. I know that you had some other prior commitments to run to. But we'll be back next week with another good hot topic to talk about. And make sure, folks, that you have your questions available, and we'll read them off to the judge, and he'll respond to your questions. That's going to do it
Okay.
for us
And,
today. Thanks a
and,
lot,
and,
Judge.
and Mark, maybe next week we might consider discussion of the recent uh, conviction of the former president.
I would love to have that conversation. We will have that conversation. I'm anxious to have that conversation.
Okay.
I think we certainly need to talk about that and to help people to understand that we're a country of laws and we have a process uh, in our the way that our courts work, and we have to respect that.
All right.
Thanks
Thank
so
you so
much.
much for
Appreciate
having
it.
me.
Okay, thanks so much. All right, folks, listen, that's going to do it for us for this week. This week's legal hour. Sorry that the judge was here a little late. But I do want to say to you, make sure that you join me for Monday night, 7 o'clock on intellectualradio.com. We'll be right back here, intellectualradio.com, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter. We really need to get the facts. I work very hard to make sure that I provide you with accurate information that you can go back and you can verify. See, that's kind of the way that it works in the courts. Someone makes an allegation, they charge someone to something, and they have facts and evidence to corroborate their allegations. That's how it works. And no difference in our public policy and how results between different administrations are working. And so that's what we need to fully understand. We need to understand that as voters and how we fit into that process. Now, just think of this. One policy that people like to attribute to Republicans. When Ronald Reagan signed into law Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday as a federal holiday, people wanted to give him credit because he's the president and he signed it into law. What they don't always tell you, or what people don't know, is that Ronald Reagan opposed Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday as being a federal holiday. But because of the political pressure and optics, he signed it into law, but he was never in favor of it. So just because he signed it into law doesn't mean he was in favor of it. Just like people like to tout that Donald Trump, when he was president, gave HBCUs money. Actually, Donald Trump only signed it into law because Donald Trump's budget director, when he came into law, zeroed out the budget for giving monies to HBCUs and minority colleges. And he only gave, and then it was Alma Adams from South Carolina, and then it was, I can't think of his name, it'll come to me, that had to help Donald Trump understand the importance of it. And HBCUs, through that administration, signed into law from Alma Adams and Walter Kimbrough, who was a two-time HBCU president, had to help Donald Trump understand that. It was only $250 million. $250 million. This president and the Biden-Harris administration has given HBCUs $16 billion in 3.5 years. Let me say it again. $16 billion from this administration to HBCUs in the last 3.5 years. That's just one item. That's definitely going to impact our HBCUs. Not only did he sign that, but he also sent a letter to the 16 banks that owe HBCUs more than $12 billion that they have not paid out to HBCUs, $26 billion that they haven't paid out of matching contributions. So there's a stark difference here. There's a stark difference here, and that any person who seems to think that Donald Trump would be good for Black people is someone who is confused and misinformed. We're going to talk about it Monday night, so please make sure you join me on Monday night for the Monday night edition of The People Show right here on intellectualradio.com, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter. Thanks so much for joining the program, and we'll talk to you again soon. Take care.